KNBR 104.5 and 680, the sports leader.
Oh boy, we'll find out what's going on with Brock Purdy when we hear from Kyle Shanahan in the postgame show. Final score, Lions hit 40 again, 6th time this year. They have scored 40 or more, and the Niners hit 34. What an output by the Niners, but they do lose 40-34.
It's game day. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you, super reporter. No boots on the ground in Arizona today. As John, we've tracked my Arizona trip that was scheduled the day before the Niners took on the Seattle Seahawks at home earlier this year. Needless to say, I didn't make the trip. It was meaningless. Adam Copeland, JD with you. Niners in the Arizona Cardinals coming your way to wrap up the 2024 season, Week 18 here on KNBR. Kickoff coming your way at 1:25. We'll be with you till about 12:25 when we hand it over to our guys Greg Papa and Tim Ryan, who will take you up to and through kickoff. And then JD and I'll be back with you for a brief and truncated postgame show because we'll have to get through that postgame as quickly as we can so we can get you guys to the creme de la creme of Week 18, and that's the Minnesota Vikings at the Detroit Lions tonight on Sunday Night Football. That can be heard right here on KNBR after our postgame show. JD, what's happening, bro? Happy Sunday.
What's going on, man? Good to be with you as always. And yeah, that Vikings-Lions game is going to be something. How about the news that broke within the last hour? Jay Glazer reporting that the Vikings, who have not locked up Kevin O'Connell, may lose Kevin O'Connell, and teams are looking to potentially trade for him. He signed a 4-year deal. He's going to be headed into the 4th year of that deal next season, and they have not extended him. The great year that they've had, obviously a couple of big win years, 13-plus win years for Kevin O'Connell. That was just the stunner of the morning across the NFL. But a lot to get into for the next 2.5 hours. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. And unfortunately, I never you had your Arizona flight. It actually never made the. I never got mine booked.
Yeah,
it never got booked. Unfortunately, considering where the 49ers are at. But one more to go. I thought the Lions game was that was the competitive spirit game. Now we'll see the what's left in the tank game, I think, today for the Niners in Week 18.
And we'll talk more about that. We'll play our hit with Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch for you a little bit later. We'll catch up with Larry Krueger and Matt Mayoko, get you the actives and inactives. But one that stands out for me today, and this is something that I'll just kick off the show with today, JD. We can get back into that Kevin O'Connell situation because I saw that report and I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, there's no way they're not gonna bring back Kevin O'Connell, right? Right? I mean, after the season,
sounds like they should have already done it.
Sounds. I can't believe they have not already. And I get the whole let's wait and see how this season plays out. J.J. McCarthy went down with the injury. You lose Kirk Cousins to injury last year, and then he exits for Atlanta, and probably a good thing based on what Sam Darnold's done. But can you imagine that team losing potentially both their head coach and their starting quarterback from this year?
It's like Shaquille O'Neal once said in the NBA. I think he was referencing the Sacramento Kings after they had made a weird coaching move. They haven't done that at any point. And he said, well, they're headed back to expansionism. I think the Vikings would quickly be headed back to expansionism, back to a real trouble spot.
Well, and especially when you look at
those guys.
When you look at where they are right now among the powers that be in the NFC North. I mean, that's the best division in the NFC in terms of depth, right? I mean, the Green Bay Packers are getting in. And while they weren't a dominant team this year, still a quality team, they're still going to go to the postseason. You're going to have the Minnesota Vikings or the Detroit Lions after tonight's game as a 14-win team in a wild card spot. So, again, this is a team that's built, it appears at least, some stability, though it may be fragile in terms of whether or not the head coach is back and whether or not Sam Darnold's back and at what price point. I mean, that's a tough decision for them considering they've used a first-round pick on J.J. McCarthy last year. They've got a guy to be their future QB. Now, do you want to move on from that this quickly? Do you have that much faith in a guy like Kevin O'Connell just to hand it to a youngster, effectively a rookie next year? Mentally, maybe not after he sat on the bench, but I don't even know how they navigate this offseason if you're the Minnesota Vikings.
It's incredible, and then they're playing for the 1 seed tonight, and I think it goes to show, Copes, just how quickly things can change in the NFL year to year from good to bad, or in the Niners' case, maybe from bad back to good after a tough year here in 2024. And the one thing that the 49ers have had here that they didn't always have, you go back to the years in between Jim Harbaugh and Kyle Shanahan, and it was the inconsistency of exactly what we're talking about, coach and quarterback, and they have stability, and I think that stability for the Niners gives them that opportunity to bounce back. It's this season's been so difficult for so many different reasons, and we've chronicled it together here for almost the last 2 months, the back half, but as you start to step away from it, and there are a bunch of huge decisions the 49ers need to make, but when you take a deep breath and you accept the fact that this year didn't go the way anybody wanted it to and start to look toward next year, the 49ers still are pretty well set up to have a bounce-back season in a lot of ways, and that's just the nature of the NFL. Maybe the Niners are playing for the 1 seed a year from now, and the Vikings are a team that's looking to go 7-10. It is, it can change on a dime that quickly.
Yeah, and I sort of anticipate, or I'm hopeful for that for the 49ers for next season in terms of the schedule that we looked at. I mean, not a lot of exciting games. You look at the Niners schedule for next year, we joke about the fourth-place schedule, and you look at the opponents that they're going to have to play both at home and on the road, and you go, I don't see a lot of nationally televised games in there, and that would tell you that there's probably not a lot of quality teams on that schedule. So the Niners playing a fourth-place schedule with the talent or the perceived talent, and I'm going to say it perceived just based on what we saw this year and the hope for so many guys bouncing back next year, but I don't think it's obtuse to say the 49ers are in a at least on paper, a favorable spot for a turnaround season in 2025.
It is the least sexy schedule I think I've ever seen. Or opponent list, I guess. We don't know the schedule.
Yeah, the order of teams, but
it's incredible to look at, and maybe it's just the NFC and AFC South. Anytime you get the South, right? The old joke that those were the games that they always save for Thursday night back in the day before Amazon got it. And
as I told you before, JD, I said there was a meme I saw about this year, but I said all the time. I'm old enough to remember when Thursday night football was Jags Titans every Thursday night of the season. It just feels like I was catching Bortles going up against the Titans and Tannehill like every Thursday night is what I thought I was getting.
No question. And when it wasn't, it was Carolina and the Texans.
Yeah. You get a dud game on a Thursday, but you're right. You look at that schedule and I go, okay, for the Niners opponents, I'm like, yeah, I could see a Thursday night Rams game maybe being a nationally televised game. I could see a Seahawks game maybe between the Niners and Seattle being a nationally televised game. And the only other one outside of that on the schedule outside of division is I was like, well, if Tampa gets into the playoffs today, I can see the Niners and Tampa when they go back to Tampa next year potentially being one of those games. But none of those look like sexy games, and that just tells you the quality of opponents, at least on paper, entering 2025 that the Niners will have to play. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Let me ask you about this because we know about some of the inactives for today. Some of the guys who aren't going to play. Demo Lenore is not going to play in this game. You've got other guys, Dre Greenlaw and whatnot, of course, due to the injuries. What about Deebo Samuel? He's going to be out today with a wrist and a rib injury. I'll ask you, JD, because Derek and I were talking about this on Dirty Work on Friday at length, and Marcus Thompson actually agreed, said he does not think we'll see him again. Dante Whitner said that may have been the last that we've seen of him. And then I can't remember. Larry Krueger said he thinks he'll be back. Deebo Samuel, have we seen the last of him in a 49er uniform? Do you anticipate he's on the roster for week 1 next season?
Yeah, it's interesting because I have thought, based on his play, it's trending toward he will not be back if you're just evaluating it on that. But if you evaluate it on the contract and the cap hits and all the different things that are in play, if the 49ers were to just flat out cut Deebo Samuel, there isn't a whole heck of a lot of benefit in the Niners moving off of him. Now, do they look to find a trade partner? I mean, I think you could say good luck. I mean, we've chronicled Deebo every week. I mean, there are times where he makes you wonder, has he lost a step? And is that something where a team would look to pay the 49ers some kind of a premium in terms of a player or draft capital to make some kind of a trade? It seems like it would be kind of a middling trade at this point, and the team acquiring Deebo would be hoping that they see a little bit of something in him to where they could get that bounce back type of a season. So the play on the field would lead me to think that maybe he wouldn't be, but the contract situation would lead me to think that he would be. And I feel like for the most part, most of the people that I've talked to get the sense that he will be back. But again, I wonder how much some of the internal attitude stuff or some of the demeanor and press conferences and things like that, because he is a beloved locker room guy. His teammates to this point of his career, I don't know if that's changed at all. I don't necessarily get the impression that it has, but he was as beloved for his mentality and the way he goes about playing the game from Kyle Shanahan on down as anybody as a tone setter in that 49er locker room. Has some of that eroded a little bit? I think if it has, then I think that would lead toward the path of maybe Deebo isn't back in addition to the production going down. So I think it really comes down to 2 out of 3. Contract leads him to stay. The production maybe leads him to be gone, but I think what ultimately might be the decider here is has some of the leadership skills that have been so profound for him, have that eroded? If they have, maybe that leads toward you need to freshen up the locker room a little bit. If he's still one of the guys that everybody loves in that locker room as a tone setter, then I think he still becomes a guy that you'd want to have around for one more year.
Let's get to the QB comparison, sponsored by Freedman's Appliance, proudly serving all of Northern California with a wide selection of luxury appliances. JD, you can visit them in Pleasant Hill to see the Freedman's difference, and sponsored by Dolce Vita Tequila, pure and simple. Well, I look at my notes here, and, Tim Webb does a great job putting together these prep packets for us. What he didn't do a good job of today was getting me Josh Dobbs numbers. You know what I mean? I got Brock Purdy stuff up and down the sheet. I'm riffing on Tim here. Josh Dobbs going to get the start today for the 49ers as Brock Purdy's season comes to an end. Back-to-back years, just 16 games. This one, though, due to injury. Real quick, JD, just after last week's game, on the post-game show, you and I were sitting there last week at Levi's, you and I and Dennis, and Larry Krueger came in. Maybe nobody more pissed about the Brock injury than Larry Krueger, who had been touting all week long and into last week's game that Brock should not be out there. Got to see some Mordecai. I want to see Tanner Mordecai is what Larry wanted to see. No Mordecai. We are going to get Josh Dobbs today, but in terms of the injury, positive in your mind, the result of what we found out about Brock hurting his elbow last week?
Yeah, absolutely. The elbow contusion, not considered a long-term kind of a thing, just something that'll heal. And I know, John Lynch likened it to, I think he was one that mentioned the funny bone, if memory serves, that it's like, sometimes the feeling just kind of goes away and eventually it comes back. And so, that is great news because, and we didn't know on Monday night, but you just fear because the 49ers have been so snake bitten by injury that this is going to be the one thing that starts to screw up the beginning of next year before next year even starts. So to have that not be the case, or at least not project to be the case, I think is huge. And right, no sense in having him be out there today. Again, last week was the week that showed you he can still sling it around the field a little bit. And now you give him this week off and you let Josh Dobbs play. And I think letting Dobbs play, when you sign a veteran quarterback the way the 49ers did and bring him in, and you get to this point where unfortunately you're playing meaningless games, I do think you owe a veteran that came in an opportunity to basically have a job interview for next year, not only with the Niners maybe, but somewhere else. So I do think when you consistently sign the Josh Dobbs of the world and the Sam Darnolds of the world, I think when you get in a position like the 49ers are, you do kind of owe it to them to allow them to showcase themselves a little bit, because that's part of the reason that they signed with you, is to get that opportunity. So maybe not the opportunity Josh Dobbs would have wanted, maybe a mid-year game where somebody's out, with a lot of talent around him to showcase his skills. But nevertheless, I think Dobbs gets an opportunity to do that, and he's been somebody that teams have really wanted in terms of being a backup quarterback throughout the league. So I don't think he's going to struggle to have a job in 2025.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you here. Niners and the Arizona Cardinals coming your way at 125. Just a quick note on Kyler Murray, who had, at the beginning of the year, the first part of the year, I thought he was looking pretty dangerous. I was like, oh, damn, Kyler may be something or on the rise. And it's why when I look at next season, I go, who in this division? And again, I don't want to say who can catch the 49ers. Obviously, they're the last place team in the division coming in at 6-10. But I look at teams as potential threats or who are like on the rise. And I don't see a team like that this year. I feel like the Cardinals took a step back after the way Kyler played early in the year. On the season for Kyler Murray, 68.6% completion, which is pretty damn good for him. 36.09 on the passing, 17 touchdowns to 11 picks. Those numbers fell off. He was sacked 30 times on the season. Now 75 carries for 550 yards, and he's got 5 touchdowns on the ground. Check this out. He's got an incentive deal today where if Kyler Murray goes for 50 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown, he'll get another like $275,000 or something like that. That's one of the incentives. Or maybe it's $750. I could be wrong. I think it's as high as $750. So I'd imagine you're going to see some scampering Kyler. I'd imagine you're going to see him running a whole lot of keepers when he gets down near the goal line as well. That's all he needs, 50 rushing yards to get to 600 and a 6th rushing touchdown, and that'll net him $750,000 today. About that.
Play the run. Play the run. It's the game within the game, right? It's the game. We're going to take your money, Kyler.
It's the game within the game. Dude, can you imagine he gets to like 49 rushing yards and he has to kneel down at the end of the game, dude? He like lose a half a yard, doesn't get it. Sorry. They won't.
He'd be QB sneaking that. Let me tell you, he'd be moving that. He'd be trucking those legs forward.
They go like 8 men out, like a Charlie Comiskey or whatever it is. You know what I mean? It's just we're sitting him down. Eddie Seacott's not getting that innings bonus this year. All right, we'll take a quick break. We come on back. We'll get you more on the on the injury report or the health report for today's game, who you're going to see for the 49ers, who you won't see. Also, still to join us, Matt Mayoko, live from Arizona. He'll be our boots on the ground today. He'll give us a little insight into what we can expect today. I'm kind of excited to see Josh Dobbs just sort of in a meaningless game. Could be kind of fun watching him run around and slinging it. Sort of a glorified preseason game today. The health report was next, then Matt Mayoko. You'll hear from Kyle Shanahan, Larry Krueger, John Lynch, and, of course, our broadcast team, Greg Papa and Tim Ryan. It's Week 18, the final week of the regular season and the final week of 49er football for 2024 into 25. More to come here on the Sports Leader.
Brock Purdy had a right elbow contusion with nerve inflammation. Most likely going to miss this week, but no long-term issues. UCLA is fine. UCL looks fine.
Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. That was Kyle Shanahan talking about the elbow of Brock Purdy. The UCL looks okay. And, I mean, what was nerve-wracking, I guess, about that after the game last week is the Niners fell 40-34 to the Detroit Lions. Is that Brock said he was throwing on the sideline, and he said his arm felt like it was on fire. And they did say they did a standard, like, UCL test, I guess. And I always wonder about that, a little different than that of the ACL or the PCL or the MCL. They do those like little sort of just quick evaluations on the field, how you can move it, which direction it moves. And oftentimes they have a pretty good read of that before they do the MRI, just where the damage is. But this one was just kind of up in the air. I think we're all feeling good that Brock's going to go into the offseason, at least not with anything torn or drastically damaged in that elbow.
No, it just sounds like it's going to take a little bit of time to heal, maybe a few weeks. to heal up, and he'll just start to feel better, and then he can get on with a normal offseason of looking to have, I think, a bounce-back year of his own. I don't think Brock Purdy had a bad year by any stretch, but with a lot of the weapons out and the 49ers' red zone issues in particular early in the season, I think you look at the raw numbers, and I think if you're a 49er fan, you're going to say, hey, it was a disappointing year. Does it change, big picture, what Brock gets paid? I mean, we can talk about that for the next 2, 3, 4 months, but the reality of it is I think Brock didn't have a bad year, but I think everybody was kind of hoping for a little bit more, and I think he is in line with a lot of players on this 49ers roster that are aligned for one of those bounce-back seasons, but the ability to be healthy in the offseason is paramount to all of that.
All right, what else do we have in terms of the health report for today? Do you have anything in front of you? I know we're not going to see Deebo Samuel. We talked about that. Demo Lenore going to be out for this one. What else you got for me today, JD?
Yeah, Deebo Samuel with the ribs in the wrist that you mentioned earlier in addition to Brock Purdy. Demo Lenore, no Robert Beal or Spencer Burford. Burford continues to be out with a calf. Beal with the ankle. Some guys that are questionable. Jair Brown, questionable with an ankle. George Kittle, ankle and hamstring, questionable. McKivitz, questionable. Isaac Yadam, questionable as well. But Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd, Ricky Pearsall, Isaac Guerrero, Talanoa Hufanga, all off the injury report as of Friday. And so that's your full injury report. And then some of the just quick roster moves for the 49ers. They did place Spencer Burford officially on injured reserve, so he was already ruled out, and Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles also placed on injured reserve, so he will be out as well for the 49ers in this one. And then, like a preseason game, pay attention to that 11:55 inactive list, because I think you may end up seeing a couple of big names on that inactive list that maybe aren't on the injury report as the Niners look to protect a few players heading into the offseason.
And we should let you know that this health report is sponsored by the Alameda County Sheriff's Office. The Alameda County Sheriff's Office is seeking highly motivated people to join their diverse and growing law enforcement agency. You can apply at joinasco.com. Yeah, the potential for healthy scratches today, I think, is obviously higher with the 49ers being out of it. This game not meaning anything for Arizona either, and you're not messing with the football gods here by not playing your guys, right? And it's interesting. We had Kyle Shanahan on Thursday for his weekly conversation, and we asked him about the Philadelphia Eagles deciding to sit Saquon Barkley today and a lot of their starters and to get ready for the postseason. We asked Kyle about how tough of a decision that is to do what's best for the player versus what's best for the team, and he talked about, you have to ask yourself as a coach, because it's extremely difficult, because he hates having to deal with that, and he had to deal with this last year, albeit in a positive light, in a positive situation, and that the Niners had locked up the 1 seed. He said, we locked up the 1 seed a week earlier than we thought we were going to. So he says, then I not only had to sit my guys week 17 or week 18, you had to think about, is it a good thing or a positive thing to sit guys down when you know you have a bye week? Because now you're talking about 2 weeks off in between having to play the end of the regular season and your first playoff game, which would be divisional weekend, and it was last year against the Green Bay Packers at Levi Stadium, or early in January, I guess, this year, I should point out. But he says, if the best thing is if a guy can go out and break the record and stay healthy, he goes, then it's best for everybody. That's the positive. But he goes, it's a weird thing to navigate. And I think back to, do you remember the year Jimmy Garoppolo came over?
Yeah.
And the Niners were 0-10? 0-9, 1-9, something like that. Jimmy rattles off 5 consecutive wins at the end of the season. And one of the big ones, by the way, that Christmas Eve game against Jacksonville. They were Saxonville that year. They went to the AFC Championship with Blake Bortles before they fell short, but they had a hell of a run that year. The final game of that season was against the Rams and Sean McVay, who had already locked up a bye. And I think they were the number 2 seed potentially. That was back when 2 teams were getting a bye. They could have been the 1, but they had locked up a bye week already by week 17 of that season. I think it was the 2017 or 18 camp. Would have been the 2017 campaign, I think, when Jimmy comes over. So they lock up that bye week, and it was the first time I think Sean McVay had a team that was roaring and ready to go. They went into the bye, and they didn't play any of their starters that final week of the season. Niners beat them in that last game. Then they go into the first round. I want to say they got beat divisional weekend, that they just got bounced out, and it was a clear rest versus rust thing. I look at teams like the Philadelphia Eagles, and I wonder, I know that they're probably the best team going right now, but just 1 week off for the bye. Just 1 week off of rest for them as they don't have the bye. Probably a little bit easier to manage and navigate, but the Lions did this last week. They brought in their guys and said, we got to play because even though this game doesn't mean anything, they didn't want to rest on their laurels last week and then have to try to get up again for Minnesota today. So the 49ers could end up with some healthy scratches today, as you were pointing out. Any names that stand out to you? Is Nick Bosa a guy you think could be rested today? You just don't want to. The disastrous thing would be to play somebody of significance today. And again, football players want to play. They're getting a game check and all that, but you roll somebody out there today and they just, get their leg rolled up on by somebody and then you're missing time this offseason, potentially into next season. This is a funky sort of thing to navigate, right?
The two guys for me would be Bosa and Leonard Floyd, just because, Floyd got banged up a little bit in the game. It seems like he's gotten a little bit banged up in every game that he's played in since coming back.
I'd say Floyd and D. Winters. Nobody gets looked out on the field like D. Winters. I mean, maybe the most, and by the way, I like the guy, but maybe the most attended to via injury player on the field since like Reuben Foster, and just because he oftentimes pops back up and ends back up in the game, does D. Winters.
Yeah, no question. So I think those would be, the two for me, the defensive ends, but you also have to have guys who can play defensive end. So you have to, it's, in the NFL, it's not just, hey, rest this guy or that guy, because somebody has to actually be able to go out there and play the position. And if you're so limited that you have to have certain players play all of the snaps, I think it's much more likely you'll see limited snap count, deeper rotation for Bosa and Floyd than that they wind up being a complete healthy scratch. But again, I think Bosa in particular, he would be in the Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey. I think George Kittle also, who's been banged up.
He's questionable for today. I actually don't really anticipate he'd play. Braden Willis, come on down. You know what I mean? He's been
exactly.
Number 9, get to know him.
A handful of guys on this roster that fall into that category of you do not want anything to happen that messes with the offseason or even have the potential to mess with the early part of training camp or the beginning of next season. So to me, you just don't want to risk it. I would put Kittle in that category. And again, with the more legitimate injury and being questionable, I wouldn't be surprised if he pops up as somebody that isn't playing. But then, Bosa and Leonard Floyd would be the other two for me. But I get the impression that those guys are probably going to be out there.
Yeah. Also, the other one I would sort of think about would be Fred Warner. I don't think you can tell Fred Warner.
He's not even playing on the report though. But you're right. Help.
It's incredible. Question. Told us weeks ago that his ankle was broken and he hasn't flared up on a report once. You know what I mean? He's like, by the way, I'm playing with a broken ankle and I'm going to continue. I don't care what these games mean or don't mean. Fred Warner's going to be out there like a maniac today. By the way, 408 checks in on the Golden State Lumber and Building Materials text line. Simply says, when is draft talk? Well, about as soon as we know where everybody's final draft positioning will be. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, JD. They can't get much higher than 11 right now, can they? The Niners, just based on record.
Yeah, they're pretty much locked in, and there may be some coin flips if they're depending upon if.
Now, a win today could drop them to like 14 or 15, couldn't it?
Yeah, and also the tiebreakers. You get into some scenarios with head-to-heads and coin flips and different things like that. But I don't know where you stand on draft talk. I'm not one of these guys that, all right, tomorrow season's over, coach and GM are back. Let's start talking draft. Like, to me, you got to at least let it breathe a little bit through the playoffs and then maybe take a deep breath. Like, all right, the draft's going to be at the end of April. We are 3.5 months away from that. Let's get to like the end of February before we start talking draft in any significant way, because there's just so many different players at so many different positions that, I mean, you could come up with a list of 20 guys that maybe the 49ers would be looking at with wherever they pick between 11 and, say, 14 or 15.
Yeah, I'd like to stay in the lottery. I like 11. You know what I mean? I'd like to stay up near the lottery there. What's the lottery go to, 14, JD? In the NBA, is it 14 teams?
Lottery in the NBA is now 14. Yeah, 16 make the playoffs, and then 14.
It used to be like 11 or 12, right? Something like that.
It did, and the legendary. So they've changed the lottery. Not to bore you with this, but so they changed the lottery back in the day, in part because the Orlando Magic won consecutive years. They ended up with Shaquille O'Neal. They went 41-41 with Shaq. They were the best team that didn't make the playoffs in Shaq's rookie year. So in those days, there were 11, and the ping pong balls. It wasn't all weighted to the 1,000, where you had hundreds of different combinations of different things. It was basically, if you were that best team that didn't make it, you got one ball.
Yeah.
If you were the worst team, you got 11. And then it went, 10, 9, 8, and so forth. The one ball that the Magic had in the hopper hit.
Penny? Is that who they got? Penny Hardaway?
And they ended up with, Chris Webber, who they traded
for Penny
Hardaway.
Yeah.
But they had the number 1 pick, and the Warriors and Magic ended up in that deal. And then they were like, we gotta change this thing. It's not going to be a 1 in 66 chance anymore. We got to wait this thing out.
Where's Vince Carter? Traded him for Chris Webber, and then they were like, 1 year of Webb's is good. He didn't get along with Don Nelson. We'll just move on, and the rest is history.
Yeah. Imagine your one ball hitting, though, in the whole thing. I
often do. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners and the Arizona Cardinals. I don't know what the hell we're talking about.
Don't isolate that.
At 1:25 kickoff today. We will catch up with our guy, Matt Mayoko. We'll see what he thinks about where the Niners land in the lottery for the NFL draft. We can talk about what we'll see today if he knows about any potential inactives who have not been labeled as inactive quite yet. Josh Dobbs gets the start today. I still think it's unlikely we see Nick Bosa, George Kittle, and whatnot. No Deebo Samuel, which means you could get a good look at Jacob Cowan today, somebody else who could be a key role or in a key role for the 49ers entering next season in that receiver room if you're either without Deebo Samuel or without Brandon Ayuk to start the year. More to come here. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, Matt Mayoko from NBC Sports Bay Area joins us from Arizona next, only here on the Sports Leader.
Purdy going to roll left. Purdy going to throw for the end zone. Caught by Ricky Pearsall right in the front of the end zone. Did he get in?
Replay assistance provided information that it is a touchdown. There is no challenge for San Francisco.
Touchdown! San Francisco, and the first one here at home for the rookie, Ricky Pearsall.
How about that? Ricky Pearsall, a hell of a week last week against the Detroit Lions. Why don't we make that the call of the game? Sponsored by Sweet James Accident Attorneys. If you're injured in an accident, call Sweet James at 800-9-MILLION and sweetjames.com. That's a new one for Week 18. Joining us courtesy of the UMA guest line. Normally we say John Dickinson, super reporter, boots on the ground. Just a super dude and an awesome writer for the 49ers who's done it for 30 years. Matt Mayoko wrapping up with us for 2024. What's up, Matt? How are you, man?
I'm doing okay. Kind of struggling, actually, to be honest with you. Kind of a little bit under the weather, but, hey, this is not the time to be leaving people in a lurch. I wear the C on my chest. It is my duty to be out there and grinding away. Whether this game has any impact on the standings or not, it's about integrity at this point, Copes. I'm determined to finish this season the right way.
I mean, what, you were going to let Jennifer Lee Chan do the 49ers Talk podcast, which you can hear wherever you get your podcast. Yeah. She's not doing that by herself. Mayoko's going to be there for her. It's a team game here, Matt. That said, C on the chest, Deebo Samuel not out there today, huh? There you go. Let me ask you this, because we had some of the inactives come out the other day. Deebo out today. Demo Lenore out. Obviously, Brock Purdy. Spencer Burford officially placed on IR. And Robert Beal out for today. And then some questionable guys. McKivitz, Jair Brown, George Kittle, Ike Yadam, Flanagan Fowles out today. But the Deebo thing with the ribs and the wrist, which, you're banged up. This game doesn't mean anything. But is there a chance that we've seen the last of Deebo Samuel in a 49er uniform?
Yeah, no, there definitely is a chance. And I don't know which way it's going to go. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that John Lynch and the personnel department, they've had a lot of time to kind of think this thing through and kind of determine where they want the roster to go, the salary cap, everything else. I think ultimately, though, they're not going to force a decision down Kyle Shanahan's throat. So, I think we all know that Kyle Shanahan is a huge proponent of Deebo Samuel and what Samuel brings to the team, what he's brought to the team in the past and when he's going right. And, this is really that 5-game stretch where he had 101 total yards receiving during those 5 games and wasn't able, to get much going on the ground either. That's been the anomaly. That hasn't been what Deebo Samuel has been all about since he's been with the 49ers. So, he had 1,000 yards from scrimmage last year. We saw in that Miami game, the 49ers offense is better when he's kind of setting the tone with that hard charging style. So it'll be interesting to see which way that goes. I trust me, I would not be at all surprised or shocked if he's not back with the team. But I do think that maybe at this stage, especially with the wide receiver situation being what it is, where you don't know exactly, how Brandon Ayuk is going to bounce back from the ACL, when you maybe don't know exactly what you're getting from Ricky Pearsall. I think I would kind of lean more toward Deebo Samuel being back on the team next season.
Matt, how do you think the 49ers weigh the production or lack thereof at times versus the cap savings, if any? Because I think when you look at his contract, there isn't a ton of incentive to just flat out cut him versus – do you get the sense that he is still a beloved figure in the 49er locker room? Because he always had been, and I just wonder if maybe a change in mood and production and temperament at times this year, is that something that could factor into this decision as well? And I guess the other part of it for me, Matty, is does it become a battle, I use that term loosely, between Kyle maybe wanting to keep him because of the things that he likes about him and maybe the front office saying, better to go in a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, I think ultimately the decision would be, deferred to Shanahan because he would have the specifics on, this is what I'm planning. This is what he does. This is what he brings to the table that nobody else brings to the table. So I do think that ultimately any kind of offensive personnel decision, when there's not a very obvious salary cap reason for it or direction of the franchise reason for it, I think that would go to Shanahan. And as far as the locker room, I don't get the sense that in the locker room anything has changed. Now, we're in there on a daily basis, and Debo, I think there has been kind of a shift in his temperament and his personality toward the media, but I don't know that that's necessarily reflective of how teammates would feel about him. When you hear Brock Purdy talk about him, when you hear some of his other teammates talk about him, there was the situation obviously in Tampa Bay with Jake Moody and Tabor Pepper. But I do think that every team needs some kind of disagreeable personalities. I think it makes it work. I mean, I've been around the 49ers a long time, and I've seen, some of their best, or I should say some of their worst teams were the most likable group of guys you've ever been around. And I've always kind of felt like, good teams need kind of a mix of all personalities, including guys who can be a-holes and say stuff that guys don't like or ruffle some feathers and this and that. So I don't know that Debo's personality is anything that would keep him away from the 49ers. I almost think just the competitiveness when he's out there and playing hard, that's something that this team needs. And, he's been a difference maker and a tone setter, the kind of guy that even guys on defense kind of take notice of when he's out there with the ball in his hands.
Talking to Matt Mayoko, our 49ers insider from NBC Sports Bay Area. Matt playing hurt today, but he's giving us his all, man. I really appreciate it, Matt. Somebody on the text line here wants to talk Jake Moody, and they ask, can you ask what Kyle Shanahan's going to do about the Jake Moody problem? And from what I can tell, Matt, it's like, again, there's no point in cutting him at this juncture. You've used a third rounder on him. You may as well bring him in next year to have him compete. And I can't remember who I asked, if it was Larry Krueger or somebody last week. Zane Gonzalez was in camp this year. What was the purpose of Zane being in camp with Jake Moody this season?
Well, that was actually the rookie season.
That was rookie. That wasn't this year. So nobody was there this year. I was thinking that was this year. That was last season.
Correct. That was a situation which was interesting because everybody and his brother and sister knew that Jake Moody was going to be the 49ers kicker to start the regular season. When you draft a guy in the third round, no way you're going to be cutting a rookie in training camp. So this year, it was basically he ran unopposed. Here's the issue that I see it, and kind of the conundrum that the 49ers face with this is that, if you watch Jake Moody in practice, I mean, he's nails. He's pretty good. And so if the 49ers bring in competition, which they have to bring in competition for him in the offseason and in training camp, I would say there's probably a really good chance that Jake Moody wins the job over whoever you bring in.
Yeah.
A kicker that has bounced around the NFL, an undrafted rookie, whatever the case may be. Jake Moody probably ends up winning that job. But then the first time he faces a pressure kick in the regular season, if he misses that kick, now you're back to where you were right now, where you don't have any faith in him. And so it's kind of, you almost kind of feel, and you guys probably feel the same way, where, Jake Moody could end up being a really good kicker in this league. He could turn this thing around. He could kick for, 10, 12 years in the NFL. But will he do it with the 49ers? There comes a point, and you certainly got that impression, last week, Monday night, if you didn't already get that impression before, that this is a guy that just body language, the words he speaks, the way he says them, you feel like he just needs a fresh start. And it'd be, the best thing for him to go somewhere else and get that fresh start. But I don't sense the 49ers are going to, make any off-season move, after this game's over on, today and cut him. So I think that, there will be a competition. But unless he's, darn near flawless from this point forward, it's really difficult to imagine him climbing out of this hole that he's dug for himself.
Well, and I think something that of note, Matt, is if you look at what he did this year, pre-injury and post-injury, I mean, all but one of the misses came after the injury. and it was on the kicking foot. So, I don't know. I don't like psychoanalyzing guys, and I don't like getting into I don't know what's going on with anybody, and none of us know what makes a kicker work or operate at a high level. And I just don't like doing that because you just don't know what somebody's dealing with or how they feel about it. But when you look at the numbers, it's pretty jarring how bad he's been after an injury, and that's kind of where I'm at. Like, let's see what happened with the injury, and maybe it is a fresh start mentality thing. But
yeah, and maybe that's the fresh start. Maybe the fresh start is a full season, to get his body right, to get his mind right, and then see where it goes from there. What I'm saying is, there's already enough pressure on an NFL kicker to begin with. But when you start off as a third-round draft pick and you have, a sizable portion of the fan base questioning why the team is using a third-round draft pick on a kicker, and then you miss, some big kicks in pressure situations, and now you're dealing with all that pressure that comes with it. It's just really difficult, I think. And again, you're right. I mean, I have no idea what's going through his mind, but you're reading body language and what he has to say. It just does kind of lead you down that road of, man, would he just be better off going somewhere else? Would the team be better off going somewhere else? Because that pressure is not going away. If he wins a competition next training camp, that pressure only gets ratcheted up, the first time he steps out there with 3 seconds left to make a 48-yard field goal to win a game. And if he misses that kick, then, the entire weight of the world comes down on his shoulders. And if he makes it, that's great, until the next time he's put in that same situation.
Matty, what is your feel, and Joshua Dobbs gets the start for the 49ers today, but what is your feel for how the 49ers view the backup quarterback position for 2025?
I think I'd be surprised if the backup quarterback in 2025 is on the team right now. I think that's, you heard what Joshua Dobbs, when asked whether he wants to come back or not. I mean, that was as non-committal of an answer as I've ever heard. So, I think he's looking for a situation that maybe is a better fit. So I don't know, what the team is planning for as far as how they're going to kind of deliver on that backup quarterback position. But, there's going to be a lot of moving, maybe more than ever, at the quarterback spots this offseason where, a lot of teams will be looking for placeholder types of quarterbacks, bridge quarterbacks, and then, a lot of teams are going to be looking for backup quarterbacks as well. So I would anticipate that there will be a lot of shuffling going on. But I would think, just kind of based on how the season started, where Dobbs, was pretty much thought in his mind he was a lock to be the number 2 guy, and he ends up being the number 3 guy for most of the year, that more than likely he'll look to go to some place where he can be a bridge guy or have more of an opportunity than he did with the 49ers this season.
I think that's probably the second most non-committal answer I've ever heard. I think the first is it depends on what your definition of the word is. I think that's the most non-committal.
That's pretty
answer.
good.
I think that's the most non-committal. Matt Mayoko, he's in Arizona. Make sure you check him out, the 49ers Talk podcast with you and Jennifer Lee Chan. Matt, get through today, man. One more, and then we'll talk to you this week.
One more. That's all we want. Just get through today. I agree.
Get through today healthy, man. See you, Matt. Great stuff from Matt Mayoko. You can check out all his work, of course, at NBCSportsBarrier.com. And again, the 49ers Stock Podcast, one of the top football podcasts in the country. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. And Niners and the Cardinals coming your way at 1:25. We'll hand it over to Greg Papa and Tim Ryan at 12:25. We're going to be joined by Larry Krueger in about 20 minutes or so, or about 15 minutes or so. We'll talk to Krug. But before we do that, Kyle Shanahan joined myself and Derek Papa on Dirty Work this week, his final hit of the 2024 season. What's he have to say about getting through this one? We'll play it for you next on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners and the Cardinals wrapping up the 2024 regular season, and that'll be it for both of these teams. A 125 kick, and we'll get you some scores and some situations from around the NFL in just a little bit here. But it's time now for Building the Game Plan, sponsored by Golden State. When you succeed, we succeed. Visit us today at goldenstatelumber.com and sponsored by River Islands. Come home to River Islands in Lathrop and discover the San Joaquin River lifestyle with its lakes, parks, and schools. You can start your tour today at riverislands.com. And for one last time, it was for me. Kyle Shanahan joins myself and Derek Papa each week of the 49ers season right here on KNBR on Dirty Work on Thursday afternoons. And this week, we open up the conversation with Kyle Shanahan, where I asked him simply how his New Year's Eve was.
It was pretty uneventful. I only realized it was because there was bowl games on, but just sitting here, I went out to practice, and Texas was up 24-8, so I thought they were good, and then I came in and heard they barely won.
Oh, yeah.
At least they're on to the next round.
But that's like the most Texas you've watched all year, right?
Yeah, and it was only it was only 5 minutes of it, just before I went out, but I got to see that Arizona State running back. He was pretty impressive.
Cam Scattaboo.
Yeah, kid's good.
Yeah,
kid's good. Kyle,
a win is a win at the end of the day.
Yeah. So we got one going on right now too. The Sugar Bowl's being played right now in New Orleans. So just looking back at last week real quick, 34 points for you guys for the offense. I thought Brock, until the injury, was playing as well as you could have asked, with the exception of a couple of the interceptions. Thought one of them was a little wonky, and one of them was a pretty good play by the defense. When you look at some of the guys who performed well, and Brock included in that game, how'd you feel about the offense on Monday?
I was real happy with those guys. I mean, just it was a challenge going into that game with just some of the O-line issues we had,
Sure.
Having to take a couple guys off another team's practice squad and then starting them, which, just hadn't been in that situation before. So it was a huge credit to those guys coming here on Christmas and everything and spending that day just sitting here with some of our assistants and trying to study the language and everything, so they just knew how to kind of what we were asking them to do. So for those guys to kind of not mess up and give us a chance to do that, I thought that was huge. And the guys stepped it up big time, but, the only thing that got us was those 2 turnovers, and they had none. It ended up being one of those games that you knew was going to be a shootout. So that's what I felt it came down to. Whoever protected the ball or got got the turnovers at the end was going to win, and they ended up finding a way to do it.
How hard is that? Like, I was thinking about that on Monday when I was out there. Like, you got guys on the O-line who hadn't even been in the building really yet, and they're learning the verbiage and the language like you were talking about. I remember years ago when J.R. Smith got traded to the Cavs late in the season, they were like, well, what are you going to do if you get the ball? You don't know the plays. He said, I'm going to shoot it. Like, as an O-lineman, you can't do that. Like, so how big of a jump is that? How difficult is that for a guy to do? And how much changes for you in your play calling with guys on the line who haven't been there?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be smart with it, especially guys who haven't played in the NFL game before, too. Sure. So it's not just being new, but it's also they're from Arizona's practice squad, which was a different deal. But, like, it's a huge challenge because to make a football play go, especially with the O-line, you got to have 11 guys tied together. You can't have one guy go the wrong way and think something's going to work. So the biggest thing to those guys is how hard they work just to study, like studying for a test. I mean, there's so much words that you have to study that, blocking patterns, running patterns, protection patterns, running plays, all the screens, the different cadences. If you sit there and do one cadence the whole game, you're going to get killed anyways. So you got to get used to the different ones we can do, the different tempos by the quarterback, all the different types of stuff, and then let alone when that's all said and done, you still got to play football and block an NFL player, and you hadn't been in an NFL game before. So that stuff can be a little nerve-wracking as the week goes because you don't know what to expect. But we worked with them hard, and the guy completely did as much on his own as he could, and that's why I was so pumped and proud of the two guys and how they did perform because, by the end of the first quarter, I was a lot more comfortable and realized that they're on their stuff and couldn't get too carried away, but they gave us a chance to win that game, and can't say enough good things about both of those guys.
Kyle, how would you evaluate your rookies this season? Obviously, you had Malik Mustafa and Dominique Pooney starting this season, and obviously Ricky Pearsall has had to deal with a lot of things, and he had a fantastic game this past week, 8 catches for 141 yards. Just how would you evaluate your 2024 rookie class?
Well, yeah, we were going into the draft thinking that we really didn't have to find a day one starter. We felt we had our starting guys, but we knew we wanted to hit on all these guys because we wanted some eventual starters, and we also wanted to improve the depth of our team, but we didn't think we were going to have the pressure on people right away to have to go. And then just a couple injuries at receiver, the injuries at guard that happened in the first week of camp, the injuries at safety, some of the things on the D-line, even the injuries at corner, kind of what's happened with Mooney this year. It got all these guys opportunities a little bit before we thought, and that's, it's always hard at first, but it's been good for them in the long run because I think all those guys have really jumped up to the challenge, taken advantage of the opportunity. I think the guys have shown that, I'd like to say they are who we thought they were, as in you never know till you get someone, but you believe these guys are going to be able to play, and you hope you can develop them a little bit more and stuff, but sometimes you don't have that luxury, and when one guy gets hurt, you got to go, and it's a credit to all these guys because they were working their tails off this offseason. They jumped at the opportunity, didn't hesitate, and I think all of them have gone better throughout this year, and that'll come to serve us well in the future.
Yeah, it was cool to see Ricky. I think it's always cool as a fan when you see a player who you haven't seen do something, especially a new guy like Ricky Pearsall. You see, like, okay, that's a ceiling game. Now we know what's in there. We know what he's capable of. We just hadn't seen that performance yet. And, I mean, you've talked about it with us throughout the year. It's why you draft him when you draft him. But when he has a game like he had a couple of weeks ago with the pre-snap penalties and there was visible frustration, how big of a deal is it for him to be able to perform after a couple of mental mistakes like that? Is that growth? Is that development?
I think it's just not getting too down and wiping. I mean, all that stuff happens all the time.
Sure.
But when it happens on a big play in the game, and then cameras catch a coach getting on you, then it's going to get blown up a lot. I mean, you guys know, I'm sure, whether you've played Pop Warner football, college football, any high school. I mean, that's part of sports, and that stuff happens all the time. But when it happens on this stage, it's a bigger deal, and sometimes people can go into a shell over it, and they stop working through things and getting better. And so I think that's the best sign. It just shows the type of guy Ricky is. I mean, that didn't stress him out. That was water under the bridge the next day, and he came to practice and got to work, kind of like he always does. And that's kind of what I really can't say enough about Ricky that I don't think people realize that. I was talking about all those other rookies and how hard they worked this offseason. Right when they got here throughout Phase 3, all of OTAs, staying around here in the summer when the coaches go away, what they do throughout training camp to kind of just get an idea so if there ever is an injury, they're ready to go. And then they kind of make their way on special teams and in backup roles until that moment. And what people don't realize about Ricky is he got about 2 OTA practices in and then got hurt in OTAs. And then he pulled his hamstring when he was away for the summer, and he came back and was out the first couple of weeks of training camp. And then right when he got back in training camp, he hurt his shoulder on the first practice. And so he never got any OTAs or training camp. So if you go back to his time at Florida, he probably had about 3 NFL practices before he got shot in the chest. And so all those injuries happened, and he gets back a week before we're going to open up versus the Jets, and he gets 2.5 practices in and then gets shot the next day. And so fortunately, he was able to come back, and only miss a month. But when he came back, those were really his first practices. So, and we were needing him to play also. So I was so just proud of Ricky that he's been able to handle this year. He's been able to get through it. His body, like when you don't get to work all that stuff in a training camp, usually your body doesn't make it through the season. And he's fought through some wear and tear and been able to bounce through it and bounce back from it. And I've been just really proud of the type of guy he's shown us and the character he has, because we know he's got the ability. We saw his character. We see how tough he is, and I can't wait for him to get a full offseason in and come back next year firing on all cylinders.
So no Brock this Sunday. It's going to be Josh Dobbs starting for you guys, and I just wanted to know, with Brock's season done, what is something that really impressed you about him this season, and what's one thing you like for him to improve upon in 2025?
Well, I'm excited to, Brock to get away for a little bit and him and I get back together and watch this whole season of tape where we can really just dissect it. Because this year, Brock's numbers and stuff aren't as good as his last 2 years, but of course they're not. He's been missing a starting left tackle. He's been missing an NFL MVP at running back. He's been missing the backup running back and the third string running back. He's been missing a starting X. He's had to go through a lot of stuff out there that's made this season much bigger of a challenge, where your numbers will change when that's the case. But I don't think Brock's playing much different than he has when he was killing it numbers-wise those 2 years. And so be able to watch him go through some adversity and be in some tougher situations. And, I think that's why he's had to scramble a little more. He's found ways to make some plays with his legs. He's had some tough games that he's had to bounce back from, which he always does. But I think Brock's had a hell of a year. There's always things that we can improve on, which we'll look into all that when we get back here in the offseason. But it's never – you always want everything to go right. But I do think when things aren't perfect and they seem like things aren't going the right way, I think sometimes in the long run it can be one of the best things that happen to you if you learn from it and get better. And this was the first season Brock had to go through where things weren't exactly right. The guys around him did get hurt. Our team wasn't quite as good. We were in some tougher situations, and to watch Brock go through that and handle it the way he did just proves again, like he has for all 3 of these years, that we got the right guy.
Another minute here with 49ers head coach Kyle Shanahan, Niners and the Cardinals this Sunday to wrap up the 2024 season. And just another offseason question for you. Do you ever because I hear, I would say pundits, I guess that's what we do too, but people talk about how coaches go about looking at tape in the offseason. How much do you look at other teams who are successful, other offenses, other plays, and then sort of converse there? Are you ever on the field and you're like, dude, that guy's running my play from 2 years ago? Like how much of that is cross-pollinated or goes into your game planning in the offseason?
You see people run. If you ran something one week, you're going to, and it worked, you're going to watch probably 15 teams run it the next week. Yeah. That's just how the league works now. So, in the off season, we'll always do studies and stuff, and you get the top 5 red zone teams, top 5 short yardage, third down. You try to break it up in areas and study what they're doing differently. And very rarely is it because you found out some huge schematic thing that you've never seen before. Usually it's because, wow, they had a really good running back and they used the run game and had a number of good things off of it. It's pairing your personnel together. Man, they had a huge threat at quarterback here, and you see how much the defenses had to change to stop these things that they were doing because of the ability of the quarterback. And then you see the things that came off of it to open it up where that might not have been open for another team. So the more you learn is you learn how to try to find certain players, and when you do find those guys, how to use their abilities in all different types of ways. And but usually getting different types of skill sets is what unlocks different types of scheme.
So as a coach, how difficult is it to decide between resting players and doing what's best for the team than going for history? So like this weekend, Nick Sirianni is deciding to sit Saquon Barkley because it's best. They already have everything locked up, but he could go for Eric Dickinson's rushing record. And then I remember, like, in 1998, your father decided that, Terrell Davis should play in that last game to go for 2,000 yards. Even last year, Christian McCaffrey, that game's in hand against the Jacksonville Jaguars, but you guys wanted to go for the Lenny Moore record. How difficult is it to do what's best for the team, but also do what's best for the player chasing history?
I think it's real difficult because it's never a clean answer. It's like best for the team and best for the player. And what is best for the player?
Yeah.
Getting him the record or keeping him healthy?
Yeah.
And what if he can't get the record and stay healthy? Well, that's the best thing for the player and the team. It's who knows what's going to happen. So you got to weigh all that stuff in. And even the Lions last week, they're in the same situation this week, whether they beat us or not. So it's you take that whole week off and they come out rusty, and they lose this week. Then it's then you're looking at, man, that wasn't a good decision. But the fact that they played against us, they didn't seem, from what I checked, they didn't get anyone hurt. And if they go out and they play well versus Minnesota, that might be the reason why. And so you got to understand that, like, no matter what happens, if it doesn't work out, and it's a result-based business, and if it doesn't work out, you're going to look back and be like, oh, I guess in hindsight I should have gone the other way. But you got to look into everything always, and no, there's not an absolute decision. But you do need to do what's best for the team in terms of, which is also best for the player, because I believe getting to the playoffs, having a chance to win a Super Bowl, I think is always better for players and the team than a record. And the records are a big deal, and they're especially one like the rushing record, because that's not just an individual record. That's huge for Saquon, but I know how much that means to a whole team, especially the O-lineman, but a whole team. I remember how big of a deal it was to my dad's team when Terrell did that in the last week. So I think so many things go into account, but I know if you end up losing a play, you gotta think, if we do lose this guy, do you feel you got a chance to still do what you're trying to accomplish? And if the answer is no, then you probably don't want to do it.
Well, were you there for that Terrell Davis game?
I was right there on the sidelines, and
that's pretty sick.
Yeah, we didn't think twice about it back then.
Yeah, let's get some bulldozer. Just let him go.
Yeah, there was no way that he wasn't playing. I think the team would have revolted on my dad if that was the case back then. But I also do think it's a little different. Like, I can't tell you how hard it was for me last year. We clinched the division a week before we thought we would. And then which means we had a bye week, because not the division, we clinched the 1 seed. And man, I would love to rest guys, because the game didn't mean much. But I also knew we were going to have a bye week. So if I rested our whole team, or as many people as I could that week, and then a bye week, I was like, man, now we got to go 2 weeks before with this. And I think that was one of the reasons that we struggled a little bit in those first 2 playoff games. We just got off to tough starts, because it wasn't just the bye week we were off. We took a lot off the week before, not playing some guys. But the thing that people don't realize in the sport too is, and I've said it and I'm wrong, you can't rest the whole team. You got to get 48 guys out there, and you need 48 guys to get through a football game. And once you just make a coach's decision to rest 1 or 2 guys, go look at what that does to 12 other guys who feel like, hey, why aren't I resting too? Am I not important? And that's what you got to always take into account. So if someone's banged up, and then it makes it easy, but you don't have the luxury. You only can pick 7 guys.
That's good insight, man. We appreciate the conversation as always, Kyle. Have a great rest of the week and a safe trip out to Arizona. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, guys.
we're here. We're in the professional level, and this is as good as it gets. So for me, it's like, why wouldn't I play for my team and try to get some momentum going for the next year with our guys and make a statement to everybody here, and that's going to be here next year, that, I'm a competitor and I want to be out in the field any chance I get. So that's my mindset.
As voice of Brock Purdy, who will not play in today's finale, 125 kickoff coming your way right here on the Sports Leader between the Niners and the Arizona Cardinals. And joining us now, courtesy of the UMA guest line, it's our guy, Larry Krueger. Hey, he's actually on camera, too. What's up, Krug? How you doing, bro?
Hey, good morning, fellas. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, man. So you fired up for this glorified preseason game? I mean, this is a game that Larry's licking his chops for. He's got his bib on. He's got his fork and his knife out. He's got his plate. He's got his dips and his sides. What's going on, dude? What are you looking for in this one?
Well, I mean, to me, you're going to find out a little bit about your team, because just who plays super hard and who doesn't. Coaches notice those kinds of things. Scouts notice those kinds of things. Everybody can play hard when it's Super Bowl Sunday, but can you play super hard and really bring it when there's nothing on the line? And it's really an insight into a young man's professionalism, for sure.
I asked Matt Mayoko this, Larry. What's your sense for the backup quarterback position? Joshua Dobbs is going to get the start today. It doesn't sound like he's in the plans for next year as well. But how do you think the 49ers fill the backup spot in 2025?
Well, I think if they're committed to paying Brock Purdy, my guess is he's going to take all the money. There's going to be a lot of ways they can play this. I mean, they have Tanner Mordecai. They claim they like him. They have two backups that they liked coming into this year. I get the feeling that Dobbs is moving on. Is Brandon Allen moving on? Maybe, maybe not. If Kyle likes him, you might see Brandon Allen and Tanner Mordecai as 2 and 3 next year. Or it could be a lot more dramatic than that. They could take a shot on a reclamation project quarterback. They could take a shot on a backup that they feel better about. I mean, there's been some guys today that are playing pretty well. Tanner McKee has played well, the former Stanford quarterback for the Eagles. Trey Lance is playing today for the Dallas Cowboys. Joe Milton has had an amazing start so far today for the Patriots. He's like 12 of 13 for over 100 yards and a touchdown. So there's Kirk Cousins, there's Zach Wilson, there's Mac Jones, there's Daniel Jones, there's just where's Aaron Rodgers going to wind up? There's just a lot of questions, and we don't know how they view their quarterback room. They may view it, hey, you know what, status quo, and that's Purdy's the 1, Allen's the 2, and Mordecai's the 3. But my guess is that probably won't be the case, and they'll probably be somebody that we're not thinking of.
Krug, go ahead, JD.
No, I'm just going to say you're pretty high on Tanner Mordecai. Why do you think the Niners didn't use today as an opportunity to get him out there? And I'll just even phrase it this way. Do you think maybe they don't want the rest of the league to see what Tanner Mordecai has the ability to do?
I don't think it's anything that I don't think there's anything. They're not like trying desperately to keep him from the rest of the league. I don't think they feel that great about him. I think it's more about, hey, you know what? Dobbs has been a good soldier. Dobbs did not get the call for the start in the Green Bay game. He probably thought he should have, and yet he didn't bitch. He didn't complain. He didn't pull a Devondre Campbell. And I just think they want to reward him. I think they realize he's probably departing, and this is his parting gift, is you're getting a start to showcase yourself for free agency on the doorstep of it. I do think they like Mordecai, but I don't think it's like, oh my God, we have to pickle jar Mordecai. We can't show anybody what kind of talent he has. I don't think they like him that much.
Talking to Larry, well, he's not playing, so they don't like him that much. Talking to Larry Krueger here, head of the Niners and the Arizona Cardinals. Larry, what will the internal emotion be for you today if we do in fact see Izzy Abanikanda? I mean, will that highlight your year, or where does that fall in like all-time great Week 18 Niner moments for you?
Well, here's the bottom line on this thing. It's like of course any fan can be like, oh, they know more about their players than we do. Okay, and generally I think we would all agree with that. But how do you defend not putting Brock Purdy, who's clearly better than Jimmy Garoppolo, clearly better than Trey Lance? He didn't get his start till week 13. So if everybody knew that Brock was better than Jimmy and Trey, they sure as hell were keeping it a secret, right? So I think a lot of this stuff is revisionist history to cover your ass on the back end. But why do I like Izzy? Because he's almost 220 pounds. He runs a legit 4.3 40, and he's not a workout wonder. I mean, this guy did it in the ACC for Pittsburgh. He had 20 touchdowns in a year. It just hasn't happened for him. He got drafted. He got hurt in the preseason. He fell in behind Breece Hall. This year they added Braylon Allen. He's just never really gotten the opportunity, and he hasn't gotten his opportunity here yet either. But when it comes, I think you're all going to see that this guy's got some legitimate NFL talent.
Larry, where are you at on Nick Sorensen for 2025? And, I mean, is there anything that can be gleaned today if it is 50-50 or there's a decision to be made as far as how the 49ers perform? Because I would think the decision would have to not already be made but not impacted by anything that happens today in the desert.
Well, they've been a terrible situational defense. Their numbers look pretty good. I think they're 6th overall in total defense, but they're 22nd in points. So they're not good in the red zone. They're not good on third down. They don't take the ball away. They don't particularly tackle all that well. Now, I'm always a little leery of the coach that the players want. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we all want somebody who's going to be kind of easy on us. Nobody likes the guy who's hard on us. We don't like that guy. We may think he helps our career, but he's not necessarily our favorite guy. And so anytime you're hearing guys like Warner and Bosa saying, oh, yeah, Nick's the guy, and the results aren't there, it always makes me pause and go, well, is he really the guy, or is he just popular with the players for whatever number of reasons? I think you gotta look around. Now, I'm not blaming it all on Nick. I would blame the defensive regression more on the personnel than like when I look at building next year, you got to build up that front seven. You need defensive tackles. You need another defensive end. You need a couple linebackers. You need a free safety. I mean, you got to build up that defense. So I think a lot of their issues are personnel related. But I also look at Vic Fangio and the turnaround that he's had this year with Philadelphia. Yeah. And I think, you know what? They need an experienced guy. They need somebody who they're not finding out if he can do it. I'll say this, too. I don't like buzzword answers. I didn't like it from Singletary when he kept saying, I need to look at the film. And I'm not really appreciating it from Nick Sorensen, who over the last 5 weeks has said, hey, communication breakdown. Hey, just a communication breakdown. Well, you know what? You only get so many of those. You only get so many of my bad before there's the door. So I don't know. I think I would go for somebody who's more established with a better track record of success.
Crew, just more of a general football question here, because it's becoming a topic of discussion. Is we're going to end up with a 14-win wildcard team after tonight's Sunday night game between the Vikings and the Lions. Some people are, I've seen it on social media in the last couple of days, suggesting that the NFL go the way of the NBA and reseed the postseason based on record, not based on any division win. And I go, well, it's why in the NBA divisions don't matter. I mean, nobody's flying a Pacific Division champions flag, right? Like nobody hangs one of those in the banners and or in the rafters and gets all excited about it or does a ceremony for it. I'm of the belief that you got to keep the divisions the way they are because that's what gives merit to winning the division. It's kind of why in baseball postseason now I hate the bye weeks or the bye round in that wild card round because there's a division winner that played 162 for virtually nothing but home field for best 2 of 3. What's your thoughts on the way the postseason is set up right now? We've had some changes in the last couple of years, but do you like the way it stands?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would suggest to the NFL and the people that run the league, don't copy the NBA. They're hemorrhaging money. They're barely relevant. Less and less people watch that league, it seems like, every year. So, I mean, I don't know what to say about that. Those are the numbers. That's what the numbers say. So I wouldn't be copying the NBA. I definitely feel like, you got to do something to reward the division winner. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with the wild card team with the gaudy record being forced to go out on the road. I mean, yeah, it's a little wonky. It doesn't necessarily. You're maybe going to have the better team on the road, but you know what? You set up your league with divisions, and you got records tied to division titles. I think there's still a lot of pride in winning your division. So I think I would, even though it looks a little odd, I think I'd stay with it.
Well, and the thing for me, Larry, is I think sometimes it sets up for a better first-round game when you have that team playing on the road, that team that won 12, or in this case, 13, 14 games. You're going up against maybe a 9-8 team. I think ultimately you want competitive games if you're the NFL, and you can say, hey, that team that wins 13, 14 should win on the road against a team that wins 8 or 9, but you're going to end up with a more competitive game, which just leads to higher ratings that first weekend.
And you never know if the way it's intended is going to have the desired result. I mean, look at the college football playoff. All of the conference champions are ducked out. And all the teams. So why did they duck out? Did they duck out because it's college kids can't handle the bye? The extra rest. I don't know. I can't really speak to it, but sometimes you have to kind of see it play out over a few years, and I think that's what's going to happen on the college side. But as far as I think, JD, I think you're right on. I mean, I think it adds a layer of intrigue if a really good team like the Vikings go on the road in the playoffs against a division-winning Rams team or whatever. That might be the only thing that gets the Rams, to maybe win that game. And to me, that makes it more interesting.
Talking to Larry Krueger here, Niners Nightly weeknights, 6 to 7 on KNBR, and a part of our pre- and post-game coverage here of 49er football. In terms of just sort of a random one out there, a guy like Jacob Cowing, somebody you're looking for today? I mean, Deebo Samuel not going to play. I'm just looking for guys that we know are going to be here next year. We anticipate being a part of this team next year. I'd like to see something from Cowing today. He's had a couple of decent moments. Obviously been a kick returner and a punt returner for them throughout the year, but he's going to open the season as one of their top receivers unless they go out and they sign somebody else, and we'll see what happens with Deebo. But Cowing, somebody I'm looking at. Anyone else you're focused on today?
Well, I think all the young guys, like, Cowing and Pearsall.
Sure.
I mean, I think you hit it right there, Copes. I mean, there's a lot of unknown about next year's wide receiver room. Is Deebo going to be in it, or is he going to be released or traded or whatnot? Is Ayuk going to be in it, or is he going to be rehabbing the whole year? Juwan Jennings is going to be in it. We know that. And we know Pearsall and Cowing are going to be in it. So the question is, how fast can you get Pearsall and Cowing up to speed? Now, it'd be ideal if Brock Purdy were in there because that's the quarterback they need to get up to speed with. But, I think another game of production from Pearsall and like maybe one initial game of production from Cowing, even if it was just like, he had 7 catches for 88 yards and a touchdown today, but it was his best game of the year, something that he can kind of enter the offseason with a little momentum. I don't think the Niners are going to be able to hit receiver in the draft. We'll have to see how it goes depending how the board shapes, but I don't think it's an awesome draft for receivers. I do think, though, there's a very good free agent market, and if they're looking for that vertical threat, McCole Hardman, Tutu Atwell, Rondale Moore, guys who run, sub 4.3 that could really give them a speed element they don't have right now. All those guys are free agents. So they will have their choice of receivers, but it's important that those two guys, I would throw Garendo in the mix there as well. If Garendo could have another, great performance, if Abanaconda could get on the field, that would be nice. Maybe Drake Nugent, who's been activated the last couple of games. I think Nugent is a really interesting prospect as a center.
I'd like to see Jake Moody make any and every kick he has today too, but that might be wishful.
That would be nice.
It might be wishful thinking.
Yeah, that's another one. I mean, if you polled the fans, they're 9-1. Moody's not coming back, but John Lynch just went on the KNBR Morning Show 3 weeks ago and said Jake's going to be our kicker for a long time. So something's got to give there for sure.
Krug, appreciate it as always, man. Enjoy the game today, and we'll talk to you later.
We'll talk to you in the postgame, guys. See you.
Great stuff there from Larry Krueger. Niners Nightly, 49er forecast on Saturdays, and weeknight 6 to 7 on KNBR, as well as the Krug Show going on at all hours of the day and night. All right, we got to get you real quick. A player to bank on, sponsored by Casino Matrix. Just drop in for gaming, dining, sports. Please gamble responsibly. 1-800-GAMBLER. And why don't we just make it the guys we just talked about, the young guys today is who we're looking at. Jacob Cowing, Ricky Pearsall. Hell, Josh Dobbs himself is playing for a contract or a job somewhere into next season. Likely not with the 49ers, but we'll see what some of these young receivers can do. And you'd like to see Ricky Pearsall even do kind of what he did last week. I don't know that he'll have the same production, but that would be nice entering the offseason. We got more to come here. The Niners and the Arizona Cardinals in just about 2 hours. We'll get that to you. We'll get you a few scores when we come on back, tell you what's going on with some of those situations for postseason or playoff berths around the NFL. There was a couple of games yesterday, and then we'll get you what John Lynch had to say. Larry was just talking about it as he joins the KNBR Morning Show every Friday. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson, Niners and the Arizona Cardinals wrapping up 2024. More to come next on the Sports Leader.
I go into every game expecting to win. I expected to win tonight regardless of our record and what their record is. They're a great football team. They're a really well-coached football team, took advantage of their opportunities. They won the game. But I went into this game fully expecting to win, fully expecting our offense to go out there and, they were banged up defense, and I thought we could take advantage. And obviously we're banged up too, but I thought we were moving the ball really efficiently, and turnovers were tough to overcome. But no, it was, and I want to go out there and play good football every single week. That's what I want to do. That's what I want my team to do. And we struggled with doing that all season, and that's why we're 6-10.
There's George Kittle there. Like how it ended on a question. Like I'm asking you guys at the record. I just know there's fewer than 10 of those things on the win column side. Shout out Joe Angel in the win column. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you here. Niners and the Arizona Cardinals coming your way 125. We still to come the Steve Young Show, our 49er player spotlight, and you'll hear from John Lynch as well as Tim Ryan from the broadcast booth down in Arizona as the Niners and the Cardinals wrap up Week 18. Time for What's on Deck, sponsored by TimberTech Decking and Railing. Everything wood should be. Visit TimberTech.com. Normally, JD, I ask you for your deck expectations, but instead we'll just give you what's on deck in terms of the postseason for the NFL. A couple of playoff spots up for grabs. Only one playoff spot available in the NFC, and that's going to go to the champion of the NFC South. If one of them decides they want to win that division, I mean, maybe the worst division in the NFC. The Atlanta Falcons are 8-8. They're technically in second place right now behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The winner is going to be the 4 seed then? Winner's going to pull the 4 seed, it looks like, out of the NFC. The Saints right now lead the Bucs 16-6 at halftime, looking real good for my Saints plus 20 on my teaser. I like that. In terms of what the Falcons need, they need to win their game against Carolina, and they need the Bucs to lose. Right now, they're getting the Bucs lost, trailing 16-6 at halftime, and the Atlanta Falcons and the Panthers giving them the what for, dude? 17-17, 12 seconds to play in the first half, and the Falcons look like they're going to at least get a field goal attempt out of this. Michael Penix, 11-22 for 184. How about relying on that rookie to try to win them a game to get them into the postseason? Pretty incredible.
Yeah, and he's performed in this game, and the irony is that Kirk Cousins, a couple of his best games of the season were the 2 games against Tampa. Atlanta won both of them, and Penix may be the guy who puts him in, and it looks like he just threw a touchdown pass here, maybe to London, might have been intercepted. The DB and the offensive player wrestling to the ground for
Could go one way or the other. It's either a touchdown or a pick, yeah.
And still it's either a touchdown or a pick, but still no indication. By the officials in this one, we're both incomplete. Wow.
Yeah, they're going incomplete pass there into the end zone.
Yeah, it says incomplete there. But yeah, incredible that Cousins had a massive game against Tampa early. That the Falcons won both of those games, which is why they have the tiebreaker over the Buccaneers. I'm stunned to see the Buccaneers down 16-6 at halftime to the Saints. And yeah, outside shot for Tampa. If they can win, they would win the division, and they could actually get to 3 if the Rams lose to the Seahawks. Rams not playing their guys at home against Seattle.
And Geno Smith has some incentives today, so he's going to be slinging it. He needs like 180 passing yards or something, or 150 passing yards to get a nice little bonus. So I'd imagine Seattle's going to be getting after it, at least Geno will. Kind of like we expect Kyler Murray today, who needs 50 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown to get a $750,000 bonus. He's going to be scampering.
And by the way, Penix just they ruled that incomplete, so he just threw a touchdown to Drake London again.
There you go.
in the end zone. They shortened up that route a little bit, and an incredible catch by London, incredible dime from Penix. So Atlanta's going to move ahead here at halftime by a score. Wow, what a play!
And then for what's on deck, so that's going to put them up 24-17 in the near the end or at the end of the first half for Atlanta. So as it stands right now, if the season ended right now, it doesn't. But if it did, Atlanta would be in the NFC playoff picture as the South Division champs. Still to come this afternoon, Chiefs against the Broncos. Broncos can win and get into the postseason. The Bengals need the Broncos to lose, and then they need the Dolphins to either lose or tie to the New York Jets later this afternoon, as well as the Dolphins go to New York. They're going with a backup quarterback on the road in some cold weather, so not boding well, you'd think, on paper for Miami. We'll keep you posted on what happens with the NFC playoff picture with Atlanta and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as, again, Atlanta now up at the end of the first half. Still to come when we come on back. John Lynch joins the KNBR Morning Show every week throughout the season. How's he feeling at the end of a down year for the Niners, entering this one at 6-10? How do they approach the future and this offseason with an expensive roster, an aging roster, and an underperforming talent pool? We'll hear from John Lynch next on the Sports Leader. Adam Copeland, John Dickinson with you. Niners and the Atlanta Falcons. Sorry, I was just watching the Falcons score that touchdown. The Arizona Cardinals, excuse me. Niners out in Arizona to wrap up the 2024 schedule. 6-10, they enter play in this one. And Arizona, who came into Levi Stadium and beat them earlier this year, enters play at 7-9. Every week throughout the football season, John Lynch, the Hall of Famer, president of football operations, general manager for the 49ers, joins Murph and Marcus on the KNBR morning show. And we got it for you right here as the Niners are going to enter an offseason with work to do. Murph opened the interview by asking John how he was doing at the end of this very tough season.
I'm doing all right. You you just said it. It's pretty clear. Not the way at all that we planned on this season going. Never would have thought this to be where we're at, but this is where we're at, and we're determined to go close, with everything that we've got down in Arizona, and then get about and get on to finding solutions moving forward on how we get this team back to where it belongs. And that's already started. That process is well in the works, but we're going to give the due and the respect to finishing out in the correct way, and then we'll move forward.
Yeah, and John, it feels like at this point of the calendar year, everybody's looking for solutions, whether it's losing weight from putting on a couple pounds from the holidays or trying to figure out things in their own personal life, and everybody has their New Year's resolutions. So what would your New Year's resolution be for the 2025 49ers?
Well, we, like I said, we just got to get back where we belong, and that's competing for championships. And I wholly and strongly believe that we've got the group in place to do that, and a lot of circumstances that happened this year, and then us just not taking care of business. Despite some I guess you call it like catastrophic type when you lose guys like Christian McCaffrey and Trent Williams, and the list goes on, and Brandon Ayuk. It's hard to overcome, but still we had so many opportunities this year and we just didn't get it done. And so you really dig down deep and you look at how you fix some of the things that have been ailing you. How do you add? Rosters never stay the same in today's football. They're ever changing. So how are we going to best improve this team? We also, the way we've been aggressive in building this team, things tighten up here a little financially in terms of cap and all that. So we're going to have to do it with that in mind. And so you got to be real thoughtful. And that process is always ongoing. There's so many different ways to procure talent, whether it be free agency, whether it's the draft, moves we've been making here at the end of the year to get people on for next year. So all those things are ongoing. As the season ends, you go through your checkout and closeout where we talk about every player in great depth, and you from a 360-degree view, you look at it from every angle, and then you start to assess, okay, are these guys we want back, and all those things, and then you start looking at new players, and that process has been ongoing. Now the coaches just get added to the equation. And I can tell you that, while this is not a place that anyone wants to be, I can tell, I feel an excitement from Kyle, the opportunity to have a whole off season as opposed to a very expedited one, because you've played in the Super Bowl, where you can really focus on, okay, what is at the root. We can go back and look at all the film in deep depth, and from a schematic standpoint, the coaches can do that. And I think it's a good opportunity for a nice reset for this team, and I feel very optimistic about where we can go.
There's so many different things to talk about in this brief time, and so many different. But you just said that reset. So, John, here on the all-important KNBR airwaves, I've declared 2025 for you guys. Here's the slogan: refreshed, refueled, revenge. There it is. You're welcome.
Yeah. The year of the I like it. Lord knows we need it. This is not where we want to live. This is not where we want to be. So I like all of that, and I can promise you we're going to pour our heart and soul into getting this right and getting us back where we belong.
Well, yeah, for sure. It's going to all about that. Well, we can talk about it later, about the whole concept of having a full off season and all that stuff, because you have a game coming up. But first and foremost, did have to ask about your quarterback. I don't know if we ever got the official results of the MRI and why he's sitting out this Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it's really nothing more than like, when you hit your funny bone. He did that, and when you get an NFL helmet in the wrong place, it like irritated the nerves a little. But there were about 10 minutes. I get word. I had worked my way down to the locker room, and all I'm hearing is first it's his hand, and then the report comes in, via the guys in security from the sideline. Hey, now it's his elbow, and I'm going, oh my goodness, But then shortly thereafter, hey, he just got dinged on the elbow, caused some numbness, and so everything's all right. Brock's going to be fine, and just a deal where it's got to quiet down, and be nice to get Josh Dobbs out there. I thought Dobbs, anytime we've put him out there, he's looked really good. And ironically, it's we really started having an affinity for Josh when he was playing for the Arizona Cardinals as a division opponent, and saying, man, this guy's really hard to prepare for. We'd love to have him part of our team. I remember Kyle and I talking about that way back when. So, Josh will get his chance. Brandon Allen will be the backup, and we're going to go down there and try to win a game.
It seems like the decision to not play Brock this weekend was made pretty early this week. Was this a decision made by Kyle, a decision made by you guys as an organization as a whole, or did Brock Purdy have any input about whether or not he'd be playing this weekend?
Everybody has input, but this was a medical decision. The guy said right away, we don't think this be smart. He obviously, did something to his elbow where the nerves are irritated, that you then get the MRI, you see some inflammation, and at that point it's an easy decision. So everybody had input, but really nobody more than the medical who made the ultimate decision, and so that's what that was.
Okay, so there we go. Brock Purdy will not play this Sunday. Josh Dobbs will. Just little things to get to as we head into this final weekend. The Pro Bowl announcements came out yesterday. Congratulations to Kyle Juszczyk, who's setting records now. I believe his 9th selection. He's up there in the archives now. And obviously George Kittle, Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, who are well-decorated players. But a player who didn't make it, he did make it as an alternate but not a starter, and took to social media expressing his dismay, was Deommodore Lenoir. And I wondered your reaction to that.
Yeah, first of all, congratulations to our 4 guys that did, make it. And to Deommodore, I've been there, buddy. I think when you have that season, there's always been a thing. It seems like it's never going to change. That, like, probably the first year you really deserve to be in the Pro Bowl. It takes another year and then you'll be there. And so I think Demo's going to be just fine. I really truly believe he should have. His play warranted it. I don't even know what the Pro Bowl is anymore. It's like a skills challenge. I remember going and playing in my first Pro Bowls over in Hawaii. And, while they weren't the intensity of a normal game, by the fourth quarter they would be, especially if the game were tight. I'll never forget Steve Young in my first Pro Bowl, being on my side. And I couldn't believe I was on the football field with Steve Young. But I remember Steve and a group of guys grabbing me, as we went back out there. The AFC was up. And, them saying, hey, I remember Steve specifically saying, hey, man, I brought 30 people to the Pro Bowl to Hawaii. We're down. We need the ball back so we can go score, and I can make some money off this Pro Bowl as opposed to doling it out. Go get that ball. And I put one of the hardest hits I've ever put on anyone in the Pro Bowl to Eddie George and got the ball back. And Eddie still looks at me like I'm a lunatic every time he sees me, and he'll say, the Pro Bowl, and you lit me up like that. And that's what we did back then. But I digress. But I'm proud of our guys, and I think many Pro Bowls to come for a guy like Deommodore Lenoir, and I'm sure glad we were able to lock him up earlier this year, and he's a part of us for a long time.
Your reaction in the box the other night on Sunday night, or Monday night, I should say, against the Lions. Now, 2 questions. One, is that reaction in the box that the cameras caught the kind of thing that Eddie George felt? And number 2, do you not like it when the cameras show you?
Well, I understand from being in the TV world that I'm responsible for my actions. So if you don't like, it's kind of like you don't like people celebrating. Well, don't let them score. If you don't like them showing you, don't act like a fool. But I don't know. Some people, Mike Tomlin used to call that guy 47 Red, my alter ego. And I try my best. I try to sit up there and be poised, but I care. And I know what these guys go through to get ready for each and every game. I know they pour their heart and soul. And when I see us not play up to our abilities, or, just sometimes stuff just happens in a game, and you have that type of reaction. Now, I don't know if ESPN needed to. I mean, it wasn't like they caught me live. They brought that back out of the commercial. But thank God for Troy Aikman, my buddy who had my back. It seemed like my old teammate actually texted me. It was Derek Brooks, and he's like, "Hey, brother, take a deep breath." And I said, what are you talking about? Because sometimes Sapp and Brooks and Rondé Barber, all these guys will text me during the game. They live and die with our team as well. And Brooks just takes some deep breaths. I said, why? He goes, they caught you, pounding your fist on the table. He goes, I love it, but just be careful. And then shortly thereafter, he said, hey, our guy Aikman had your back, so you're all right. He goes, I kind of like it. So, it's just, I don't know. I have tried to change it. You try to change it, but you can't take the fight out of and I don't, frankly, I don't care to. So as long as I want to have those type of emotions, or I should be doing something else. Now, can I handle them? Can I be, you can live by that never let them see you sweat type thing. I wasn't sweating. That was just being there with our guys. And so that's what that was. I know it became a meme, and what the hell.
Oh, and trust us, John, we know 49er fans love to see that kind of emotion from you, but I'm sure a lot of 49er fans would love to see what your reaction was seeing Jawan Jennings block Terrion Arnold out the back of the end zone on Monday night.
I loved it. That's the type. I don't love 15-yard penalties. Unfortunately, it was offset. But Kyle has something that that he always says, and I think it's so true. I mean, I think offense. Games are won on the fronts, right? But if you want to set the tone, do your receivers block, and do your corners tackle? I think that's a big litmus test for what teams are ready to play. And Jawan's always ready. And earlier in that drive, Brian Branch is just a tremendous player. I think one of the better defensive players in football. And Jawan had Brian Branch 25 yards down the field earlier in that drive. Is that cheap? No. He's just playing between the whistles on the one, through the end zone, into the cheap seats, or I guess they aren't cheap seats, the expensive seats. He maybe took a little far, but, I want that in a so-called meaningless game, because I think guys like that, that's contagious competitiveness, and that's who Jawan Jennings is. That's why we love him. Next time you tell him, hey, when you drive him through the end zone, you should probably stop. And the good thing about Jawan is he's coachable. He'll listen. And so I loved it. And I think they're a tough football team. I got a lot of respect for them. So not advocating for things like that, but I love the spirit is what I love.
Finally, this last one, positive one, is 77 for Jawan. That's my slogan, man, because I think this would be such a great story. If Jawan Jennings gets 77 receiving yards, he hits 1,000, and you probably know, but if you don't, he becomes the first Niner receiver drafted in the 6th round or lower to reach 1,000 since our favorite, the late, great, dear departed Dwight Clark. What a stat that would be, John.
That's really cool. I knew about the 1,000. I did not know that about Dwight. So that'd be really cool. It's easy to pull for Jawan because of the effort he gives, on a week in, week out basis. So that would be really cool. Going to be Josh Dobbs, who starts out and throwing it to him. And so hopefully we can get that done.
Have a great trip down to Arizona this weekend. I think we have one more time before we let you go, and we appreciate everything, John. Have a great trip.
Yeah, thanks, John.
Okay, thank you, guys.
There he is, John Lynch on KNBR 104.5 and 680, the Sports Leader.
Adam Copeland back with your 49er player spotlight ahead of Week 18's tilt that's going to wrap up the 2024 season between the 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals. Niners looking for a win against a division opponent who they lost to at home early this season, which was a sign of things to come. The Niners, though, coming off of a loss 40-34 to the Detroit Lions last Monday as the Lions get ready for a division tilt tonight with the Minnesota Vikings and a chance to win the number 1 seed in the NFC playoff picture. That's going to bring us to our 49er player spotlight today, though. After the Niners put up 34 points against the porous Lions defense, Ricky Pearsall showed out for the first time in his NFL career. 8 catches on 10 targets last week to lead the 49ers in both receptions. He actually tied George Kittle, who also had 8, but led him in yardage. 141 yards receiving at 17.5 yards per grab, and had a touchdown in this one, which I called it a ceiling game. It's like seeing what a guy has now. You know what he's capable of as we get ready to enter 2025, and they should be relying on him. We've seen this happen for a couple of Niners receivers taken early in the draft, in Deebo Samuel, in Brandon Ayuk, that in those second years, the Niners are looking for production out of those guys. Ricky Pearsall had his best game of his young career, and John Lynch spoke about Pearsall's performance when he was on with Murph and Marcus earlier this week. He talked about the performance against the Lions and the potential to be the best of this 49er 2024 rookie class.
I think we've known what we have in Ricky and that it's only going to get better. Ricky, when you look at his offseason, he came into training camp, and got a hamstring early on, or got a hamstring training away from here. So he missed, the first 3 weeks of training camp. As soon as he came back, he hurts his shoulder. We're deep into the year, and he's just about to come back, and he gets shot in the incident everybody learned about. So Ricky really, really didn't practice in his rookie year, where practice is everything. And so we knew he was he was going to be swimming upstream a little, but we also knew this was a very natural and talented football player. And so I applaud Ricky. I applaud our coaches for being patient. And everybody knew what we had, because we see it out here on the practice field all the time. Ricky's going to have a really bright career. Ladd McConkey's a heck of a football player. So I'm not going to get into the comparisons of those two, but we're very happy with what we have in Ricky and where this is going to go in the future. I'm looking forward to see him finish this game out in Arizona. Hopefully has another really strong performance, but I'm really looking forward to him stacking an off season and then seeing what we can be from the jump next year. With a lot of practices. And, I think I know it. He's got a very bright future.
And the Niners will be relying on him at the start of next year, where presumably he'll be without Brandon Ayuk after the knee injury. We'll see what happens this offseason with Deebo Samuel, but whether he's here or not, Ricky Pearsall's a guy they're going to be relying on after taking him 31st overall in the 2024 draft. Again, 10 targets, 8 catches, 8 of his 25 on the season came last week, and 141 of his 331 yards came last week, as well as that first home receiving touchdown. And that's why, as they enter play today in the final week of 2024, Ricky Pearsall is this week's 49er Player Spotlight. The Hall of Famer number 8, Steve Young, the best half hour in sports radio, joins Dirty Work. Myself and Derek Papa and Tim Webb hangs out too every Wednesday throughout the 49er season at 5 o'clock. Seriously, don't want to miss it. It's always a great conversation with Steve Young. We were talking about the talent the 49ers have lost on the coaching side of things over the last couple of years. I mean, Mike McDaniel was here. Now he's in Miami. Of course, Robert Saleh left to become a head coach with the New York Jets. DeMeco Ryans leaves to become the head coach of the Houston Texans. You lose that much talent, but it's all because of the Kyle Shanahan coaching tree. You have that much success, other teams start to come and pluck you. We talk about Kyle Shanahan developing and growing and changing and evaluating what he does into next season offensively. Steve Young talked about how the best coaching trees often come from the coaches who share that knowledge. Here he is.
Remember, Bill Walsh at the height of his career packaged it all up, everything he knew, and handed it to his assistant coaches to go take head coaching jobs. And on the way out, he said, I'll see you in the championship game. And so he was laying the groundwork for competition against us, which did happen, by the way. And but that was the spirit of abundance, and that's the spirit of that's Kyle's spirit. Why are all Kyle's coaches running around the league now? Why are all Andy's coaches running around the league now? Because they got it all from them. They fed from the fountain, and because that's the spirit of Bill, and now they get it, and they can. And if you have the aptitude for it, like Mike McDaniel does, which is an interesting cat, right? He can go do that, and he benefits because Kyle didn't hide it in a corner like this is my proprietary work and no one can see it. And I will name other coaches who were very successful who did that. And now look at their trees, and it's not the same.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys. It sound right, boys. It sound right, boys.
goes into every level of the defense. When you have your opportunity, I know we had 2 against Stafford. I mean, if we get those, it sparks a bunch of other ones. So you just have to make your plays when they're there. Just be in the right spots, and I don't think we've done a great job of that this year.
That's the voice of Nick Bosa, who will be out there today as the 49ers get ready to wrap up the 2024 NFL season against the Cardinals. 1:25 kickoff. We'll hand it over to the broadcast team, Greg Papa and Tim Ryan, in about 20 minutes or so. For them to get you ready for the finale of 2024. And we'll go up to the broadcast booth in Arizona now. It's our guy, Tim Ryan, who will be on the call. What's up, Tim? How are you, bro?
Doing quite well, Copes. How you guys doing?
Doing pretty well, man. So when you look at this one, I mean, we talked on Friday, you and I did, and Derek, and we talked about how I know a lot of people are calling it a glorified preseason game, and there's some young guys who are going to get some opportunities. But where's your focus today? I was talking to JD and saying, after what Ricky Pearsall did last week, we know Debo's not out there. I'm looking for some stuff out of the young guys in the receiving game. I'd love to see Cowing today.
Yeah, and you're going to see Jacob Cowing for sure. So he's going to have opportunity. I'm with you on Ricky Pearsall in the growth and development, and I would anticipate he is going to be heavily targeted in this game and get him, obviously with the slow start, with the challenges that he had to start the season. He's getting better every week. We talked about it on Friday, and I think you just continue to feed that and let his confidence grow. Look, you get better by playing pro football in games. Yes, practice is practice, but it's totally different from game time. So I would anticipate Ricky and his route running and the way that he gets after it and the top of his routes creating separation, especially if these guys want to man up like they did in the first half. And remember, they smothered the 49er wide receivers. Ayuk had a couple of big plays, but other than that, especially down in the red zone, Arizona with a lot of their trick coverages just said hell with it with Nick Rallis, and they manned him up, and they were able to get enough pressure, and that paid off for him. So I want to see Ricky beat man coverage today. They're going to have to. And then another guy I'm fired up to see, and I think he can cement himself as the number 2 quarterback here is Joshua Dobbs. Now, maybe he'll have opportunity somewhere else. He's in year number 8, probably a backup, throughout his career, but a perfect for the rest of his career, but a perfect backup because of his skill sets, what he can do with his legs. He has seen this movie before in terms of his old team and what Arizona likes to do. So I anticipate that he's going to play well, and I hope he does because I think he can do himself a big favor going into next year by coming out and having a good showing in this game.
Tim, I want to ask you about Jacob Cowing, just what you've made of his season overall as somebody who gets an opportunity to watch practice and also talk to the coaches at a greater level than maybe the regular media does, and just what he needs to focus on in the offseason to really make a jump from year 1 to year 2 and get on the field.
Well, I try, Jay, to not talk to the coaches about these players.
Well, you hear things.
Like, seriously, I do my thing, and I know what I'm looking at, and he has got heat. There is no question he has got heat, and he's got real speed and had, obviously an ultra-productive college career. He needs to spend the whole offseason in an NFL weight room. He needs to put on, I know he dropped weight when he went home over the summer and came back light. He needs to get himself up to 185 pounds, 190 pounds. And get a little more strapped up because he does get nagging injuries when he's out there. And I think the bigger he gets and the stronger he gets, if you'll notice one thing about Jacob Cowing, and there's no doubt the punt return has gotten better over the last several games. But he falls down a lot, and he goes to the ground. And I think part of that is leg strength. Part of that has been slippery conditions on fields. But you got to have your feet up underneath you, and I think just getting stronger and getting a better base to that body will serve him well.
For a season, and we've talked about what happened a few weeks back with locker room stuff, and there was, you and I talked about it, and I think everybody agreed, and we all know that this was not a broken locker room. It was a down season. There was a lot of injuries, but when you look at the lineup today, and you see that guys like George Kittle, who were questionable coming into this one, he's going to play. Fred Warner's had a broken ankle all season. Dude hasn't even showed up on the injury report. He's out there. Nick Bosa is going to play. What does that tell you about the core of guys who want to be a part of this thing going forward?
Well, I think the first question that most people ask in terms of the evaluators for this team and John Lynch and the whole staff, as I call the paid professional observers of talent, is they try to identify which guys love football and that really love football and that will play in the parking lot if you ask them to. And That's the culture here. That's what you want, and that's exactly what Fred is. That's exactly what Nick is. That's exactly what George is. Now, I don't know how much, if those guys will play a full 4 quarters in a meaningless game. I think they're going to want to get a look at some other guys. We'll see if that happens. Maybe Bosa gets his 10th sack and calls it a day. Maybe George is only in on 3rd down, or maybe George is only in the red zone. I don't know how they're going to handle it. I think a lot of it is up to those guys and how much the coaches want to see out of the other guys. But that's a clear message sent to the rest of the locker room in a really a meaningless game. Other than, it's the first game of 2025, and I think everybody's hoping 2025 is much better than 2024. But that's the message those guys send, and they send it every day. Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell, when he was here, and I hate even saying his name, but I never saw him take 1 rep of individual, and they do individual for the first 20, 25 minutes of practice when you're working with your position groups and going through that. Guy was in the weight room on the bike. Now, maybe year 9, and he didn't need to do his individual. I don't know. But Fred Warner, all-pro Fred, the undisputed leader of this football team, never missed a rep in practice. No. With that broken ankle, that fractured ankle. So, those are the kind of guys that you want to have leading your team, and those are the kind of guys that can send the message to the rest of the players. This is how we do it here. I'm fired up to see Tatum Bethune play today. He's going to play. I think he's going to play quite a bit. Arizona plays a lot of 2 tight ends. They'll get into some 3 tight end stuff. So the base defense is going to be out there, and with the injuries to Flanagan, Fowles, and the other guys that aren't available, we're going to see Tatum Bethune finally, I think, play some. And he's got a nose for the ball. He's not real big, but he's got a nose for the ball, and I'm encouraged and fired up to see how he plays.
Hey, Tim, I was just going to ask you who maybe on the defensive side would be somebody to really look at. So you answered that, so I'll hit you with this. As far as just the setup for 2025 now, obviously the 2024 is not what anybody wanted it to be. How well set up do you feel the 49ers are, big picture question, to have a bounce-back year in 2025?
Yeah, well, getting Brandon Ayuk back, and we'll see what that's going to be in terms of how early in the season he comes back from that catastrophic knee injury is, to me the arrow is pointed up. The arrow is definitely pointed up on Ricky Pearsall. Hope to see George Kittle get an extension because George has got a good 4 or 5 years left in him. When you really look at how he's practiced and he's played all year in a 1,000-yard season and the 8 touchdowns, and then CMC, I see Christian all the time. The guy hasn't stopped. He was in the weight room working out the day after the Buffalo game when he tore his PCL. And I think he is very encouraged, not having to get surgery, that he comes back. And he came back long enough to where he got healthy enough to know and to show everybody he has still got that gear. And when he was rolling that night at Buffalo before the injury. So, you start looking at those guys. Trent Williams, I talked to Trent the other day. He feels like he's going to be able to come back from his ankle injury, and you start thinking about that, and now it's weapons galore again on offense. And then defensively, I think they're going to have to beef some things up in terms of draft picks and a war daddy inside, a defensive tackle that when he gets one-on-ones can win and win consistently. And Malik's been able to, he's got 4 or 5 sacks. Jordan Elliott is a freight train in there, and he's got great knockback. But you need a guy when they fan that protection out to Bosa, and they turn 2 on him and sometimes 3 with a chipper as well, or with a running back or a tight end. And then they turn the guard that way. Whoever's one-on-one, and usually 2 of them, either one of the ends and one of the tackles are one-on-one, they've got to win. And that's got to happen more consistently on the interior. So my hope is they go out and draft one of those guys, in the top 15 or wherever they're going to be picking. I think there'll be a couple of guys available. But I think the future is bright for this team if they check all those boxes.
Talking to Tim Ryan, he'll be on the call. 1:25 kickoff. We'll hand it over to him and Greg Pop in just a minute. Tim, just sort of a fun thing on the way out here. As a former player and a guy who's an obvious fan of football and loves the game, how about when guys are playing for incentives and some money to be made on the final day of the season? We've got one today. Leonard Floyd can make a little extra money if he picks up another sack and a half today. Also, Kyler Murray, 50 rushing yards and 1 rushing touchdown. Going to get him $750K. Just some stuff to pay attention to today.
Well, let's make sure and get Flo his, and get a sack and a half. I think he's got to get 10. Is that a $500,000 bonus?
It's another. So he got $500,000 just for getting to 8. He's at 8.5 right now. If he gets to 10, he'll get another $500,000. And get this, if he has a big day and he gets to 12, he'll make $2 million today, Tim.
Wow. And look, I love his matchup. He's going to have opportunities.
Yeah.
And remember the Week 5 game when that 4th and 5, and it was a great play by Kyler Murray, but as he was unloading that big flow, Leonard Floyd was right in his face. So hope that he gets it. I do like his matchup, both against Jackson Barton, their right tackle, and their left tackle, Kelvin Beachum. And they're not going to let Kyler Murray get his 50 yards and a rushing touchdown. It happened Week 5, I think, without James Conner out there, and they're very creative in how they dial up some of those. It's not all zone reads. They got a lot of QB powers, a lot of misdirection stuff where they get a numbers game with pullers out in front of them. Discipline on the edge will be big today, and I hope he doesn't get it. I mean, look, I'm for players making as much as they can, but we don't want him getting 750 by having a big day running on the ground. This leaky defense has got to get fixed in terms of the run.
And everybody would like 750, but he's doing okay. You know what I mean? Tim,
he's not bad.
I think he's doing all right. Tim, enjoy the last day of school, man. Have a good call today. We'll talk to you later.
All right, fellas, be good.
All right, good stuff there
Thanks,
from Tim Ryan. We'll head it over to Tim and Greg in just a couple of minutes here. Yeah, you pointed that out to me. Nick Wagner, do you have that tweet in front of you, JD, the note there on Leonard Floyd? Because we have the actives and inactives.
And Leonard Floyd is active. And I think we were talking during the break. I think we both, I will stand on it. I owe Leonard Floyd a personal apology for even hinting that he wouldn't or shouldn't play. But yeah, he's already earned $500,000 in incentives for getting to 8. As you mentioned, he has 8.5. 1.5 to get to 10 gets him $500,000 more. And again, if he can get to 12, which would be 3.5 sacks, I mean, that would be a monster.
Have a day, kid.
Yeah, he would get $2 million for that. So, woo. Incredible.
By the way, the keys for the game today is sponsored by Bay Area Chevy Dealers. Visit BayAreaChevroletDealers.com. Why don't we get you the inactives and the actives for the 49ers today? Really, the inactives will give you. We knew Brock Purdy was out, Deebo Samuel out, Demo Lenore not going to play, Robert Beal, Trey Avery, Khalil Davis, and unfortunately for Larry Krueger, Izzy Abanaconda not going to see the field today. He is not active
Larry.
or up for this one. In terms of some of the positives here, just what you'd like to see, and you do on the last day, do want to see some guys that you know out there, right? You'd like to see the Niners at least put together a performance. As Tim was talking about Josh Dobbs potentially playing for a job, whether it's here or somewhere else. George Kittle is going to play. Basically, everybody who is listed as questionable entering the game today is going to be out there. George Kittle with that ankle and hamstring, he'll play. Jair Brown is going to play. Colton McKivitz with the knee will play, and Ike Yanum, who's dealing with the pelvis, he's going to play, which I think all positive, like when McKivitz is out there, because, again, you're rolling with an offensive line of Nick Sakel, Charlie Heck, Austin Pleasance in front of Josh Dobbs there.
Yeah, and the other one for me to just keep an eye on is Juwan Jennings today, too. You look at Juwan Jennings for the
77 yards from 1,000, right?
Exactly. 77 yards for 1,000. I think the Niners will look to get Juwan Jennings involved in the action. Want to see the young guys obviously do their thing. Pearsall, great game on Monday night. And, Jacob Cowing, I think getting an opportunity to see a little bit more what he can do would be good. But get Juwan Jennings the 77 yards to be a 1,000-yard receiver. I mean, he was a true – I know the Niners lost a couple of his massive games, but think about where this 49ers team could have been. It didn't end up where they wanted it to be, but it could have been a lot worse, believe it or not, had Juwan Jennings not performed at the level that he did all year. It's huge year for Juwan Jennings.
And I pointed this out a couple of times throughout the year, and you and I have talked about it. The two big games that he had, as you pointed out, they didn't win those games. You get the Rams game where he has 3 touchdowns and all that, and huge performance. In terms of how he's responded to those, he's the kind of guy you want in that locker room. He's the kind of guy you want as a leader in the receiving room next year when they're going to ask a lot of him, especially at the start of the season, because he didn't want to talk to the media after those games. He didn't want to tout big performances for himself. Guy who had 19 catches all of last year had a 10-catch game for 3 touchdowns, right? Like, he didn't want to tout any performance of his own when the team itself wasn't up to the level where it needed to be. I said to Tim Ryan on Friday, quickly become, I think, my favorite player, at least this season on the 49er roster. One of the most reliable guys. You love third and Juwan, but 19 catches last year. He's just 77 yards from 1,000. That would be a nice little nugget, and as Tim said to us, a feather in his cap, because there's numbers you want to get to. Baseball, you want to hit 300. You want to get to the nice round number of home runs. You want to get to 20, of course. It's better than 19, but it just looks better, right? Getting 10 sacks, that'd be a sweet one for Nick Bosa. Getting another sack and a half for a guy like Leonard Floyd would be cool. But getting to 1,000 yards for Juwan Jennings would just be epic, I think, in terms of what they've needed this year, what he's provided, and what their hope is for 25.
Yeah, and again, I just think impressive, and we've said it really the last couple of weeks as this thing got away from the 49ers, impressive, Copes, that there are so many of the brand name players, not all of them, but the big name guys are out there and giving it a go when frankly, I think you wouldn't blame the 49ers or the player individually if they did not go in these last couple of games. But they are, and I think it sets a positive tone for next season.
Well, we're going to get out of here. We're going to hand it over to Tim Ryan and to Greg Poppel, who will take you up to kickoff. Just real quick here, the Buccaneers trailing 19-13 near the end of the third quarter against the Saints. They need to win the division and get in. Falcons and the Panthers are tied at 24 apiece with about just under 5 minutes to play in the third quarter. We'll be back with you for the post-game show, a truncated post-game show, because we'll get you out to the Sunday Night Football game, Vikings and the Lions, right here on KNBR. Thanks to Tim. Thanks to Kyle. Great job today. The Niners and the Arizona Cardinals are coming your way as we hand it over to Tim Ryan and Greg Papa. It's Week 18 as we wrap it up, the 2024 season, right here on the Sports Leader.